Just give me 1 second.
And I see if you do a long description, you won't be able to see that all. I tried.
All right. Mike, can you see the presentation there?
Yes.
We're good to go. All right, awesome. And just as another bit, if you have questions or comments, feel free to leave those in the chat as we go along, and we'll do our best to address them as we go. And we will hopefully have some time near the end to have do a little bit of breakout discussion, as well as answer any questions that folks have. So today what we're sharing with you is some information about the experiential learning model and how that can be utilized in virtual and distance settings. So some of you may be familiar with the model in general, but having a better understanding of how that can be used in the current settings that we're navigating nowadays. And so we have Mike Compton with us today to talk about that. And he's with the Minnesota State 4-H and is the STEM director. And as some of you may know, 4-H bases all of their programming on the experiential learning model. So Mike is definitely an expert in this area. And then after that, we'll be sharing our engineering design challenge modules, which are free and accessible online. And it's a resource that Mike and I have worked together through partnership with my center and 4-H to be able to offer. And so we're really excited to announce and launch those. Before we jump into the experiential learning model, I want to do a quick poll. And you should be able to see the poll now. And let us know what grades you currently work with or teach. And also, what region in Minnesota are you from?
Nice to see a real mix from location, so that's great.
Yeah, that is great to see. We have some South, some Central folks. Majority of folks with us today are working with high school aged, but we have a few in the other aged categories.
And I see we do have another attendee, much like myself, worked across the entire state, so probably not going to put that in the poll. So thanks for sharing that.
All right. One of the things that I like to share, make sure I point out, seeing where everybody's from, is there you guys can all see the results. Gotta get back to my presentation. Is the spread of area that we reach within Minnesota. So with Minnesota State, we have the Centers of Excellence, which there's 8 of the different centers that each represent a different key industry within the state, but we serve all of the 37 colleges and universities within the state, which you can see on the map here. And one of the great things about that is we're able to provide connections between educators and those state universities and colleges. So if you take a look on that map and see if there's what college or university might be near you, and if you don't have a connection with them already, I'd encourage you to reach out to us, and we can hopefully help you build a connection with somebody at one of those locations so that you can enhance or further supplement some of the programming that you offer. I also wanted to mention that Mike, who's with the University of Minnesota Extension. Extension in Minnesota has 89 county offices, so there's an extension office near you, guaranteed. And there's 11 regional offices and 5 university campuses. So both of our entities are spread throughout the state and really serve every single one of you in various different capacities. I want to real quickly mention a little bit about what the Centers of Excellence do before I turn it over to Mike here. So like I mentioned, there's 8 different centers of excellence, and you can see the list of them there. Engineering Center is one of those 8, and that's what I represent. And our main goal, or kind of our main mission with the centers, is to provide connection and resources between industry, post-secondary entities, and K-12 academic sector. And so really helping to foster and build those pathways that lead students and youth into high pay, high demand jobs within Minnesota. So then with that, I'm gonna go ahead, turn over the screen sharing here to Mike so that he can share with you more about the experiential learning model and how it can be utilized in virtual and distance settings. Mike?
All right, thanks everybody. It's great to have you all here. And before I start, I just want to thank you all for the important work that you do. You know, educators are more important now than, you know, they've always been important, but especially now in the unique times we find ourselves in. So again, thank you for the great work that you do all across the state. And so really quickly, know that the University of Minnesota Extension, it's called Extension for a reason, because we are an extension of the university. And so in all of the counties across the state and in your communities, know that you have experts that can connect to the research and offerings that are happening at the university. And so in your local communities, in particular, 4-H is there. And our primary focus is youth development. We really work to serve the youth, and we're driven. We connect with over 60,000 young people across the state every year. And we're driven by over 11,000 adult volunteers. They're really the key to our programming. And we work in non-formal and formal education settings as well. And so really the key piece of that is experiential learning. And so today I'm just going to give you a quick snapshot of what that is and what that means. And I mean, we could easily do a deep dive on this at some point, which would be great. But I just wanted to give you an overall snapshot of what that is. And so you can think about and how to apply that in an online setting. And then we've deliberately done that with the modules that we're going to be sharing with in a little while. So I use these visuals to give you, so you can think about and see what experiential learning looks like before I share the definition. So I'm going to share the formal definition first. So the strategic, active engagement of students in opportunities to learn through doing and reflection on those activities, which empowers them to apply their theoretical knowledge to practical endeavors in a multitude of settings inside and outside of the classroom. So that's quite a mouthful. And so what it is, if you see, I highlighted some key terms when we think about what experiential learning looks like. So strategic, active engagement, doing, reflection, empowering, talking about applying their knowledge. And so if we look at that detailed description, in other words, it's really all about hands-on learning that's focused on learning by doing, and it's an active engagement process versus a passive process. So young people are, as you can see in the picture, they're engaged, learning by doing. They're not just sitting and receiving information, they are actively connecting, and learning is happening while that connection is taking place. And so that's really what experiential learning is. You know, we're good at giving it broad, interesting descriptions, but when it all comes down to it, it's very simple, very basic, and we know that it works. So real quick, before I share with you what that looks like online, I wanted to share with you 3 design models or approaches that you can use, not only in person, but think about when using this experiential learning approach online. So the first thing is, and many of you may have had experiences with this or have heard about what problem-based learning is. And that's really just learning about a topic through problem solving. And generally it happens when young people work in groups and there's no correct answer involved. The young people are at the table to help set goals and create the outcomes. So an example of that would be young people addressing food waste at their school, or connected to COVID. What are ways that we could help limit cold and flu or COVID transmission among students at our school? So really about that problem-based focus. And those things you can easily address in an online format as well. The second kind is project-based. And so you're going to learn more about this later on when we share about our engineering design contest and challenges that we have available. But well, young people learn by investigating that a certain question or problem or a challenge, and then that really engages them in that active learning and allows some higher order thinking that can take place while they complete a project. And think about those 21st century skills. That skill development is a really key piece. And we find in our evaluations that that does take place in that project-based learning. So another example of this would be young people asking the question, how do I launch a community recycling program? And then working together to make that happen. And then the third example, which we do quite often in Minnesota 4-H, is inquiry-based. And so this is really youth-driven. So they explore, they ask questions, they share. Educators, we can provide some basic information. So for example, let's take the topic of pollution. We can provide some background information of what pollution is or looks like locally, statewide, or nationally, and then turn the students loose and they can research, ask questions, make suggestions, come up with solutions, and then share those and communicate those outward. And so online learning with the experiential learning model also provides the opportunity for this to take place. Yeah, so those are three things for you to consider when thinking about approaching and using online learning with this model. So I've got a model from my friend Stephen out in California Extension, and he's provided a model for us to help think about the three parts of what that experiential education online learning is and what it looks like. So there's an experience piece, a reflection piece, and then an application piece. And I'll talk about each of those briefly. So the first phase or piece is the experience. And the experience is all back to that hands-on learning that I had mentioned a couple of minutes ago. That's how it's driven, and that's really the key to make experiential learning online to be successful. If you don't have that excellent hands-on activity or approach happening, then it'll be difficult to reach those learning objectives that you have. And so what you should really focus for, or what we do focus on and what we want to happen, is to have that authentic experience happen for young people. So we want to make sure that whatever we're doing, whatever that activity looks like, it needs to be relevant. Otherwise, many of you work with teenagers. If it's not relevant, they're not going to care, especially online learning, because you don't have them in a classroom all together in person. If it's not relevant or it doesn't have any meaning, then they're going to be so what, and their attention will be elsewhere. So we also want to make sure that it's quality, again, so that key learning can take place. We can reach our objectives, and then students learn something that they can take away. And then, of course, when we're online, we want to make sure that it's safe, not only in a safe space for young people to be it, but again, we can't go out and blow things up in the driveway or do some of those awesome other things that maybe we could do in person. So we could think about safety in that regard as well. Okay, so that experience. And the second part of experience, again, it's focused on activity, something that they can do that's active. And so we really want to engage them. And when we say engage, we're talking about intellectually, what are they doing physically? How are we providing an opportunity to be social with one another? We know that teens are extremely social, so how are we providing that? And then what kind of social and emotional learning or support can we provide when young people are online with us? And then the last piece of this is we also like to encourage them to ask questions, to do some type of investigating. Maybe they'll use a certain kind of a model, or they'll collect and analyze data. They'll evaluate some information, they'll share. Now you may only focus on one of these things or a combination. Any of those is an effective way to have that experiential learning model take place online in that experience piece. So the second phase or the second piece we use is reflection. And so just like it says, it's all about sharing, processing, and generalizing. So this is really about providing and teaching young people to have those communication skills to not only share what they've learned externally, but also internally. And so ways we do that are by asking thought-provoking questions. This summer, Minnesota 4-H, like many of you, we had to adapt our learning from in-person to online. And so we got to put these pieces into place. And we really had to spend a lot of time figuring out what that reflection piece could look like. So young people aren't just coming and doing an activity and they're on to the next thing without really thinking about what happened and what they experienced. And so asking them questions in your own words, why don't you tell me about what you've learned, or why don't you write about what you've learned? There's a lot of great online tools I would suggest for you to explore if you're looking for some reflection opportunities. Mind maps are one option that I really like to use often. And then self-assessments. What do self-assessments look like? What kind of questions can young people ask themselves to reflect on their learning? Then the third piece is the application. So how do we apply what they have learned? And basically it is what it is. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's application, it's apply. So as educators, we need to think about how can we connect what youth are interested in and what they care about to their lives from what they've learned from whatever format, whatever information we provide, whatever lesson we provide them online. And then how can we interact with them and have them apply or share that information, open-ended, live voice, video discussions, video chats, whatever it might be, those things that we can do while we're live together. And then what are the things we can do to follow up or that they could record and share out afterward? You know, a lot of the things, blogs, podcasts, videos, those type of things. And there are a lot of options nowadays to help educators provide in that application process. More than ever, it's hard to even keep up with all of those things. So again, 3 things: experience, help young people reflect, and then how can they apply that moving forward. And lastly, some very simple outcomes for you to think about. Call them the ABCs, outcomes of online learning. And if you focus on these 3 things, it will really help you have a positive, engaging experience for the young people that you connect with. So agency, the first thing is youth become change agents in their lives and communities. You know, now more than ever, if you look at the research of where this generation and these young people are, all of it, plus with all of the things that they're experiencing in their communities and that are happening across the country today, this piece, how they can be change agents, is more important than ever. And so think about what that looks like as either a part of your lesson, or what's really great is the next piece that they can explore, the next pathway that can take place after your learning series or whatever it is that you're providing those young people. Because they really want to make a difference. And so how can we help them think about that and provide those opportunities to do that? So then belonging. This is the thing we talk about in 4-H, and it's number 1 on the top of the list when we bring young people to the table, when we bring them together online, when we bring them in person, when they connect with adults, is to really create that sense of belonging, that they're included as part of a group. They're included to come together with us to connect, to share, to discuss. So think about how you can do that online. That's super challenging online, like very challenging to do those things, but it really is vital, because if young people, even through a class, whatever that class might be, or an extracurricular activity, or a 4-H online experience, if they don't feel like they belong, then they're going to remember that, and then the great learning opportunities we want to take place are not going to happen. So, and finally is competence. So what is it we can help them learn and develop? Sense of mastery. What are those learning skills, those 21st century skills that we can help them develop in whatever we offer? How can we really help them deepen some piece of knowledge, participate in a community of practice or whatever it might look like, apply their experience to new situations, and on and on and on. So really think about those simple outcomes when we're exploring what experiential learning can look like in an online format. So I know I went through a lot in a short period of time, but that was really just kind of an overview. And I would be interested in the future, if anyone's interested in more of a deep dive, we certainly have those resources available. So, all right, I'm going to pause there and turn it over to Melissa. I suppose I have to stop sharing my screen first. There we go.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. Yeah, if there's any questions you have for Mike, you can go ahead and post those in the chat, and we can address those in a little bit. And like Mike said, if you are interested in more information about using the experiential learning model in an online setting, or when we get back to face-to-face, or if you are doing face-to-face, don't hesitate to reach out to Mike. And Mike, you want to go ahead and throw your email address into the chat so that people can really contact you. What we're going to jump into next is sharing the engineering design challenge modules that Mike and I have collaborated on. And just like what Mike just talked about, the experiential learning model is the basis or the foundation for how we develop these engineering design challenges. And so that's, you kind of learned a little bit about the pedagogy behind what you're going to see now in the challenges that we've created. So we're in the process of creating a series of 4. We currently have launched the Marble Run Engineering Design Challenge, and we'll, by the end of the month, have the Roller Coaster Challenge launched, and then followed by Bridge Building and Balloon Zipline. And these online modules, which you'll get a preview of here in a couple minutes, are appropriate for groups and individuals, and we have provided insight and guidelines for how you can implement these modules in virtual and distance settings, which definitely can be really challenging when you're trying to have groups work together. Groups of students do things in a virtual or distant setting. There definitely is a big challenge that comes along with that. So we provided some tips to help navigate that process. So a little bit of an overview about these engineering design challenges. So they're age appropriate for 3rd grade and up. So that includes adults. And so maybe you're doing some sort of peer training with other educators, and this might be a good resource to use if you're having to try and navigate that in a virtual setting. And they're great for using in-person settings as well. The target audience is quite broad. So it's individuals, classrooms, families can do these together, groups of friends, anybody who wants to be challenged, have fun, and learn a little bit about some STEM principles and apply those principles. Like I said, it's appropriate for online, face-to-face, virtual, or distance settings, and they are free to access. And I know everybody likes free resources. So some of the features that we've built into these online modules include, there's an educator guide built into there where educators can learn a little bit more about how they can implement these modules in their various settings. So whether you're a non-formal educator or you work in a formal classroom but are doing it in a virtual setting, we have tips and strategies for you to use. Each module focuses on a specific STEM principle so that the students or the learners who are going through it really narrow in on one type of principle and applying it utilizing the engineering design process. We have built-in timers into there. There's interactive reflective activities. So going back to talking about the experiential learning model, how reflection is a really key piece to that. So we're very intentional about integrating various reflection components into these modules. There's opportunities and instructions for students to do gallery showcases or even have a little bit of friendly competitions if it's being utilized in groups. And then after folks complete it, they are prompted to complete a program evaluation. And when you complete a program evaluation, we will email you out digital badges and certificates of completion for each of the modules. So it's kind of a fun thing to collect, and the certificates of completion could be something that educators ask their students to share with them to kind of verify that they went through the model or the module if they're being asked to do it on their own or individually. A little bit more about the educator guide. So within the guide, we do have the very first prompt is asking you to complete an evaluation form after you've used the modules, because feedback is really important to us. So these are things that we're hoping to continue to build on these modules, provide more modules, and we really want to be able to provide things that are relevant and will be used. And so the feedback that is provided by educators is very important to us. There's a section on how to use these modules in a in-person, face-to-face classroom setting, how to use them in virtual or distance settings, and some things to consider, such as students' access or ability to share screens, and some privacy things such as that. As well as there's links to additional resources that are related to engineering challenges. And I will drop this link in the chat, but this is the link where you'll be able to access the modules. And right now, the Marble Run is available for free access. And like I said, by the end of the month, we'll have the roller coaster module available, and then 2 more coming this fall. So without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and switch my screens and show you a preview of the module. Let me find out where it's at here. I have to find the right screen. Apparently I have too many screens open right now. Give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. All right, so there's an easy 3-step process to get access to these on our website. And again, we'll share the link here with you in the chat once I go through this, but you simply fill out a name and email form, and then you're emailed a link with a passcode. Click on the link, enter the passcode, and then you're directed to the site to be able to access the specific module that you are interested in. So the start of the module, just you kind of get an overview and an outline of the different components within here, and a little bit of overview of what I've already provided about who's appropriate for what settings, etc. So if you go ahead and you just start your challenge, once you're in here, it's a really fun platform that goes through the different aspects of what's going to happen through this challenge. There's a link to the educator guide. And then it just jumps right into the challenge. So going through what the challenge description is, limitations. So whenever we're trying to engineer something, we always have some sort of limitations or constraints that we have to abide by. So for the Marble Run challenge, it outlines the different limitations that students or learners need to follow. And so for this engineering design challenge, it's people have to create a track that keeps a marble rolling as long as possible. And so one of these, the main limitations are the supplies. And a note on the supplies is Mike and I were very intentional about trying to only utilize supplies that would be common in any household, so that we're not creating something where people have to go out and buy different things to be able to do this activity. It's stuff that students, educators, whoever should be able to scavenge their house and find things. And we allow for parameters of a little bit of flexibility. So if there's a specific thing that somebody's not able to find in their house, we provide some prompts later on to help you think creatively about what is available to you that you could use as a replacement for that specific supply. But as you see, this one, this challenge, you need newspaper, cardboard, paper cups, or any other miscellaneous building material. You need tape. You need a marble or a ball bearing. Most people probably don't have ball bearings hanging around their house, but I would suspect that most people have either a small ball or a marble that they could use. Scissors and stopwatch. And then we provide suggested time limits, and later on in the module, before you start the challenge, we have 3 built-in timers. So depending on the time limit you want to do your challenge for, you select the appropriate timer. And then here's a little bit of the meat and potatoes of the educational piece to this, is we provide some content around what are some key things that the learner needs to think about to be very successful at this challenge, or most successful. And so we go through the engineering design process, and they learn about the different aspects of the process. And then, like I said, every challenge has a specific STEM principle that it focuses on. And so for the model run, we look at friction and how friction impacts motion and how a marble would move down a track. And so we have a video. Most of the videos are 2 minutes or so long, so they're not very long videos. So they're just, again, succinct, to the point, and provide tips of what somebody really needs to think about related to friction as they work on this challenge. And then before jumping into the challenge, we do a little bit of a reflection activity and have the learner reflect back on these different components that they just were exposed to. And so a little bit about the engineering design process. Here's a fill in the blank about friction, and then some flashcards to test their knowledge about the different steps of the engineering design process. So each of the modules have different reflection pieces, so 3 different key reflection activities that a learner will do before they jump into that challenge. Provide some tips for success, and so really helping to set somebody up to be successful and think reflectively about this process before just kind of diving into it. And then we go through some prompts, just making sure, do you have everything you need? And so it's a different series of questions that this lady will ask to make sure that students or the class is ready for getting through the challenge. And if any of the questions, you know, so for example, do you have your supplies? And you say no, well then she gives them a prompt about take some time to find your supplies. If you don't have the supplies that are asked, you know, what are some other things that might work for you? And so there's a series of questions here to make sure that people are set up and ready to go with the challenge. And then this is where you can select your timer. So for this challenge, we have it set at 20, 30, or 45 minutes. And so folks would just select the appropriate timer and click the start button, and they would be ready to go, and an alarm sounds once that time has run out for their challenge. Then we just go through kind of a wrap up of what they just did, what they learned. And then we go through a reflection piece. So this is where we do a little bit more deep dive into what people learn through this process. And so this series of tabs is if somebody is going through this as an individual, they would go through this process here of a kind of more of a reflective process of where they're thinking about what they did, what they would do differently. We also have instructions for doing a gallery showcase. This is if you had some different teams or groups doing the challenge and reflecting through what they did and how they did it and learning from each other's challenges. And then a competition version where you can have a little bit of fun with it and set some guidelines up for how to evaluate the challenges that they did and reflecting through, you know, what they learned as well. And then wrap up, just revisiting the objectives of what they learned and what they did. And then providing some links to, here's a link to the program evaluation. So from the learner standpoint, we'd love to hear what they thought about it. And then once they go through that evaluation, they'll be sent the digital badges and certificate of completion. If they want to start over, they can start over. And then we have links to our other engineering resources. So the first link is to the Engineering Center of Excellence, which I work with, and some of the resources we offer. And then there's a link to the 4-H engineering challenge as well. And then the last bit would be going through or looking at the educator guide, which some of you are probably interested in. And so the educator guide really just outlines and provides some tips for how you can implement this in the various settings. Starting with the top 3 ways and reasons why you would use this. And so these challenges are great for either icebreakers, so if you have a new group of students getting together, or you're wanting to do some team building, these work great for that. If you want to introduce them into some sort of unit or lesson that relates to maybe friction or relates to engineering design or design processes, this is a great thing to use. And then substitute teacher day. So if you ever have a day where you got to be out, this is a quick and easy kind of plug and play type of thing that you could have a substitute teacher do, because everything's built into it. Everything's here. They just have to walk the students through the process, or the students can do it on their own as well. We have several considerations for using this face-to-face, if you're doing it in individual team settings, the space you need, the time you need. In virtual and distance settings, some considerations for if you're having students go through this individually on their own time, or if you're having it set up as a virtual or distance team activity. And then making sure you're reflective on some of the limitations that students might encounter when doing this in a virtual setting. Again, thinking about privacy concerns and access to technology. And then there's some ideas for how do you assess learning through the virtual or distance setting when utilizing this. And so there's some different ideas here that you could work with and utilize. And then again, we have links back to our pages so that you can access more of our resources as well. So that was a walkthrough of our marble run that's available, and you can download that or access that today and use it as soon as you're ready to. I'm going to go ahead and jump back over to the presentation, and we're going to take a couple minutes to do a little bit of reflective discussion. And so we will be breaking you into hold on a second. We'll be breaking you into breakout rooms of a couple people. If you're not in a position right now where you can't join a breakout room, don't worry. Just stay in the main room here if you aren't able to have discussion at whatever location or what you're going through right now. Not a big deal, but we'd rather have you stay on and just hold tight till we come back so that we can share with you a couple other resources that we have. So the discussion questions that we're wanting you to consider in these breakout rooms is, how do you see yourself being able to apply the experiential learning model to your current teaching situation? And how do you see yourself being able to use the engineering design challenge modules as a resource in your current situation as well? And so we'll just break out for a couple minutes, take a little bit of time to talk with a couple folks about these, and then we'll come back together and see where things are at. And then Mike and I have some additional resources we'd like to share with you that both of our organizations offer. So I'm going to go ahead and throw you guys into some breakout rooms. And if you can't join again, don't worry about joining one, and just stay in the main room here with us. All right, we should have everybody back from breakout rooms now. And I think it just take a couple minutes if we have any volunteers who would like to unmute themselves and share a little bit about what you discussed within your breakout group there.
Sorry if you were in the middle of speaking when the breakout room closed. So that was our case. So we apologize.
Any volunteers to share either about what you guys discussed about using the experiential learning model in your current situation, or using these engineering design challenge modules?
I guess I'll go. I'm all right doing this. So this is my first year teaching like a STEM class, and I'm in Rochester, Minnesota. So this is my first year teaching like a STEM class, and I teach more Somali students than anything. And for something for us as educators, like doing this stuff for us seemed more natural, and for them, for the students I have anyways, it seems like they haven't had the chance to do this kind of stuff. So a lot of it is like a slow learning process for them. So I think my kids personally are actually going to like this because it's going to be something new to them.
Awesome. Anybody else have similar situation or other ideas of how they might be able to utilize either of these resources?
I'll just share it. Like we talked about the learning in asynchronous environment. So at my school, the students are in asynchronous online learning. So everyone is at a different time. So we really have to personalize and customize it in order to present to the class. And then we also talked about the grading and evaluating is a concern too for teachers, and communication, because sometimes the students, you send an email and they don't respond to you right away. It takes some time. So there is like it's challenging.
Yeah, the asynchronous situation of trying to teach anything is definitely very challenging. Trying to have any engagement and communication is always an issue. In our modules, we do provide a couple tips or ideas for that asynchronous setting and having, students do this at their own time. But I think one of the challenges is building that connection between students and allowing them to share ideas. That's where we see a lot of that learning happening, is when you learn from seeing or hearing what somebody else is doing. And so, whether it's discussion boards or video sharing or whatever it is, in a platform that students can access later, that might be one of the ways to help address some of those challenges. But yeah, and especially I've heard that a lot with the communication piece, especially if you're working with, middle school, high school students or college students even, trying to get, reliable, consistent communication is definitely a big issue.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we're gonna go ahead and move on here. Next is we want to share some of the other resources and opportunities that we have available. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Mike. And if you want to take a couple of minutes, Mike, to share some of the things that 4-H has available that might be of interest to folks.
Certainly will. Okay, so really quick, we have a program similar to what Melissa's going to share, our Engineering Design Challenge. It's focused on helping develop those 21st century skills in young people, and our evaluations every year shows us that this program does. So it's really focused on that engineering design. That's the heart of it. It's based off young people coming together, working on teams and creating Rube Goldberg machines. Every year, we also have a curriculum that you can use. Now, the curriculum was originally designed to do in person, And so our next phase will be adjusting those lessons to meet the needs of online learning. So they're not there yet, but know that there is a free Engineering Design Challenge 12 lesson curriculum for hands-on STEM connected learning that then leads young people to the opportunity to engage in an engineering type of challenge. And so it's designed for grades 3 to 12. We have a level 1 that's focused just on simple machines. And then we have a level 2 where designed for grades 7 through 12, where they apply 4 different types of engineering to their Rube Goldberg machines. So including electrical, chemical, and fluid power. And so that's a pretty excellent learning that takes place that we see every year. And so every year we have a different theme, and Melissa and I, we partner our organizations to keep our themes the same. And this year our theme will be driving change through transportation. And so we're just creating what our program is going to look like right now in the fall, and we'll be launching it this winter. So that will be something to look for. That we're just putting the pieces together right now. But last year's challenge supplies, lessons, and theme are up on our website, so they're still there. And then if you're looking for any lesson plans or activities on a variety of topics connected to STEM in some way, shape, or form, this year we created Minnesota 4-H at Home. And so it has polymer science, there's a lot of agriculture and horticulture lessons, there's healthy living, there'll be some space exploration coming soon. And so just know that this is a resource for you when you're looking for lesson plans and activities to do with your students. And so I'll put the links in the chat for you. So quick snapshot for you.
Thanks, Mike. And I know people are going to have to jumping off here really quick to go teach or do whatever you have next. Before I share a couple of other things that we have available, I just want to thank Mike for joining us today and sharing with us about the experiential learning model and how that can be utilized in online and virtual settings. Want to remind folks that there will be an evaluation. You sent out your email that you signed up for the webinar with. And if you could complete that, that would be great to provide us with some feedback on the value of this and potential future topics. And then as a reminder, we do have 6 more webinars coming up. The next one will be October 21st from 3:30 to 4:30. And I will put that link back in the chat where you can be able to sign up for that if you haven't already. Same place where you signed up for this webinar is where that would be. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share with you quickly a couple other things that we have to offer here at the Engineering Center. So we have several key program areas. We have most of them focusing on developing an interest with in engineering related careers in a project or problem-based way. So we have advanced career curriculum that's for high school, and there's a sister program called middle grade STEM, and those are very much team-based, hands-on project-based curriculums. We have several professional development opportunities for educators that we offer on a biannual basis, so twice a year. We have engineering teacher workshop, which is for any STEM educator and helping understand engineering related topics and how that can be integrated into your coursework. And then workforce partnership seminar. So really looking at how do we build engagement across academia and industry. But what I really want to share with you quickly is our engineering machine design contest, which is normally, like Mike mentioned, this is an in-person contest where teams of 3 to 10 students design and build a complex machine using everyday objects. This year we have a virtual twist. This is for middle school and senior grades, and so we have it into 2 divisions. Students compete at a regional level, and then they can advance to a multi-state level or championship. And they're judged on a engineering journal presentation and how their machine operates. This is similar to a Rube Goldberg type of machine, and we really focus on the learning and the life skills that students work through, and not so much the whimsical aspects of a machine they might create. So if we're coming up for 2021, like I said, we are had to shift gears a little bit for the current situation that we're in. And so we will have a virtual open regional contest that any students can participate in. There's still a team competition. And so they have to be able to navigate some of the aspects of being able to come together as a team. However, we've provided a list of I think it's like a top 10 list of the safety tips for staying COVID safe, and recommendations to make sure that students are being safe while they're building their machines. We are also integrating into our championship event a team engineering challenge in partnership with Skills USA. And this is a same-day competition, so there's no pre-work required. Students can show up the day of the contest and they participate as a team on solving some sort of challenge. So they have about 2 hours and are given a kit of supplies, and they have to address a specific challenge that they're given. And then they have a brief interview about how they worked as a team and what they created, or their prototype. And then students are evaluated on that interview and the prototype that they've developed. Our contest overall is aligned with the National Academy for Engineering Grand Engineering Challenges, as well as the NGSS, or Next Generation Science Standards. And like Mike mentioned also, our theme is driving change through transportation. And there are some resources on the website to learn a little bit more about that. With that, I want to thank everybody for hanging in there and attending with us today. And hopefully we'll see you at one of our future webinars. If you would like to get in contact with Mike or I, our email addresses are there on the screen. Otherwise, we hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And if you have any questions for us, we'll stay on here for a couple minutes if you have time to linger. Otherwise, hopefully we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day, and let us know how we can help.